Great, right. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to crack on with this session. So for those of you who don't know me, it's very good to meet you. So my name is Will Saunders, and I'm the founder of social enterprise and creative design agency called Goodwill Studios. So I've been in the creative industry for around 15 years, and I've been self-employed for around half of that time. And a few years ago, I found myself a bit stuck. So I found myself a bit lost. I was unsure why I was doing what I was doing, who I should be helping with my skills, and really why I was spending my days struggling through work. Thank you, Jill. I like the name too. So yeah, and at the same time, I was going through my own personal journey. So I was learning a lot more about the environment, all the bad things in the world, and how my own lifestyle was negatively impacting the environment and the planet. So I worked hard to make a lot of quite fundamental changes in my own life. And I decided, because I was self-employed, I needed to realign my business actions with these personal values. So now I exclusively help those who put purpose over profit and those who are on their own journey to do something good in the world. So I help you find your brand voice, to create a visual brand identity that articulates your mission, and ultimately position your organization to succeed. So does that all sound good and make sense to everybody? And you can find out a bit more on our website here, and you can find me on all the socials at Goodwill Studios. So you join me, or I join you, at a very strange time right now. I'm sure we're all feeling a bit uncertain about what's happening. So we're seeing the effects that climate breakdown is having on the planet right now. We're seeing more frequent and more devastating flooding around the UK and across the rest of the world. This was Leeds only a few years ago. And there are unprecedented wildfires sweeping across many parts of the globe, devastating natural habitats and killing billions of wildlife. It's also destroying people's homes and livelihoods. There's the problem of wealth, income, and racial inequality that has resulted in the protests that we continue to see in America right now. Oh, and let's not forget that pesky little global pandemic that's disrupting everything and causing our leaders to run around like headless chickens. But it's not all doom and gloom. You know, I believe that people are fundamentally and genuinely good, and that we all want to do something about it. There are so many charities, social enterprises, individuals, and businesses who are trying to solve some of the biggest problems facing us. From targeting big structural change and influencing policymakers, to innovating on products and processes to make our lives better and more sustainable, whilst trying to protect the environment in the process. So there's a lot to be positive about despite everything. And this brings me on to my next question that I'd like to ask you. Do you think brands have a responsibility to make a positive change in the world? I'd like you to guess what percentage of people who were surveyed who answered yes. It's their duty. That's a good answer, Martin. So what percentage do you think answered yes in a recent survey? 35%, 60%, 70, 30, 60, 30, 50, 80%, 25, 80. Okay, all quite mixed, but a lot of quite high answers here. So, according to the Futura Consumer Research, 98% of people said yes. Yeah, wow, that is a big number. So this proves that there is an appetite and expectation that we can all do something about it. So people are demanding that businesses and organizations who we all pay our money to use that money for something greater than just filling, the shareholders' pockets. And the public, your audience, if that's who you serve, expect you to positively contribute to society. And not only that, people are trying to live better lives themselves. So with 92% saying that they're trying to live more sustainably. So this next slide has some interesting statistics as well. 88% of consumers say they want brands to help them become more environmentally friendly. However, less than 20% of people think those same brands are actually doing enough to help them. So here lies the opportunity to fill that gap. And my other question to you is, are you going to help them? And I hope the answer is yes. So my philosophy that I live by, Jill, hell yes, awesome. So my philosophy to live by, and the title of this event is A Better World by Design. So we have designed, intentionally or not, almost every aspect of our society. We've designed products, processes, economic systems, even belief systems that may have resulted in a lot of the problems outlined at the beginning of this talk. So none of us can fix these problems alone. I know for a fact that I certainly can't, but we all have our roles to play using the skills and the platforms that we have. Excuse me. So my role happens to be branding and creative design. And I believe that brand is at the heart of everything an organization does. Because I've learned that branding is powerful. It lies in a deep and hidden place within us that is persuasive. And branding can shape public opinion. It can convince people to do and buy things they otherwise wouldn't. And I believe branding can be a force for good. So speaking of the power of brand, we have an almost unlimited supply of free, clean, lovely, delicious drinking water from our taps at home. Yet, genius marketing and cool branding has created a multi-billion-dollar bottled water industry. And we need to realize that these companies don't produce water, they produce plastic bottles, which, as we know, is terrible for the environment. So if branding can convince us to pay up to £2 or £3 for something we can get free at home, that just shows how powerful branding can be. So that's an example of something that's branding been used to sell as something that's detrimental to the planet. So how about something a bit better? So I know nothing about cars. I can drive, not very well, but I don't know anything under the hood or anything about them. But I'm going to talk a bit about cars now. So for the longest time, electric cars were perceived by the public as slow, unreliable, a bit of a hippie thing, and extremely unsexy. Then along came Elon Musk and Tesla. Now, I have got some issues with how he runs his business, and there are some legitimate concerns about the raw materials used in the construction of these electric cars, especially the batteries. However, Tesla and Elon Musk has harnessed the power of branding and strategically positioned their product to address the concerns that the market had. So now people think that electric cars are fast, they're fun, cool, sexy, and futuristic. And they've really changed the conversation and paved the way for more affordable cars to be accepted into the market, because now electric cars are cool now, they're fine. So they understood how they wanted to be perceived, and they had a vision for what they wanted. And they created a lower emission way of getting around and totally changed public perception of what electric cars mean. So they analyzed their competitive landscape. They understood how other brands were perceived in this landscape. And using the power of branding, clever marketing, product design, they created a viable brand and positioned themselves from somewhere around here to somewhere around here. So what if you could do that with your brand? How much more of an impact in the world could you make? So hopefully by now we're all kind of on the same page about what it means when it comes to branding. Like, what really is a brand? So your brand is more than just your logo, but it is still really important. And I'm not just saying that because I do this design, as I'll talk you through the next few slides. So does anybody know, or could anybody have a go at describing the definition of a brand in a sentence? Like, what is a brand? Any ideas? It's not what you say, it's how they say it is. Good answer. How you're perceived by your customers. Very good. Tone of voice, the mission, values, what they stand for. Good answers. And Martin has got this spot on. Well, this is what I like to use as the example. So your brand is how other people describe you when you're not in the room. So yeah, like some of you have very correctly said, it's all about the perception that people have of your organization that you leave in their mind when they encounter you. So we can't control people's minds, which is a good thing. However, we need to do everything in our power to make that perception a positive one. So how do we do that? So being a graphic designer, I have quite a few tools available to me. And you'll hear these words, logo, visual identity, and brand, used a lot. And they're sometimes used interchangeably. So what do they mean, and what's the difference? So when talking about an organization or an organizational brand structure, I like to use this diagram. So if you can see here, you have logo in the center, your identity, the next layer out, and your brand on the outside. And I also like to describe a brand as if it were a person, because it can have a lot of personality if done correctly, and people can relate to them as such. So think of your logo as your face, the face of your brand. This is what people think of when they first hear your name. And the next layer out is your visual identity. So think of this as the clothes that you wear, how you present yourself to the world. It might be the perfume or aftershave you wear, the car you choose to drive or not drive. Everything you can is in your control to present yourself to the world in a certain way. And finally, as we've just found out, or we already knew, your brand really is your reputation. It's what people think of you and how you make them feel. And your logo influences your identity, and your visual identity influences your brand, and your brand perception is really the key to success. So in order to get this desired brand perception, you need to find your brand voice. So the ethical market, quotes, is becoming more and more increasingly saturated, with some of the really big brands and big dogs in the world seeing this as a good marketing opportunity for them. And they're starting to try and position themselves to become the green or ethical choice when, you know, really we know that not all of them really are. So we need to find our unique brand voice to stand out from the crowd and make an impact. So if it's okay with you all here, I'd like to talk you through my 3-step method to building your unique brand voice that can help you articulate your values and your unique position, effectively explain your mission and your goals, and to create that important emotional connection with your audience. So the first step in finding your brand voice is your brand's perception. So the perceptual values that we have and we want. So if you recall the electric car example earlier, how you're perceived by your audience is key to your success. And it's even more important when we're trying to do something good in the world. And you need to create an emotional connection with the people who you're trying to either help or convince this is the way to go. So depending on your goals and the demographics of your supporters, you need to tailor your approach to have the correct brand voice. So some of the values in my 3-step brand voice exercise are as such. So is your brand that you're building more educational or inspirational? And what might that mean to your audience? You know, so an educational brand could be more about these are the facts, these are the things you need to do, these are the steps to help you get there. Whereas a more inspirational brand could be seen as more of a lifestyle brand, where it makes the thing that you're trying to push in the world seem desirable and cool. And now you can be inspirational to unlock the educational aspects and kind of vice versa. But the point of these exercises is, if you had to distill it down, what would you want that perception in your audience's mind to be? Like, oh, these guys are really inspirational. They make me feel good about this and I want to do it. Or these guys are really educational. They teach me the tools that I need to get there. The next one is, are you more established or more of a trailblazer? So what do we mean by that? So if you want to be seen as more established, you are perhaps talking more about your heritage and the tried and tested processes that you do that get good results, and you can be, you know, a very trusted, established brand which people can depend on you. However, if you feel like you want to be more of a trailblazing brand, you're talking more about, okay, this is our vision of the future and we want to take you on that journey. You know, you may or may not be a brand new brand or business at that point. You can be quite an established brand who is constantly innovating and being that trailblazing brand, but it's good to understand where on the spectrum you need to be. Now, another one we can go through is, are you more understanding or more empowering? So what might be the key differences between these two? So I like to think of, in terms of the brand message and the brand voice you have, if you're more of an understanding brand, you can be a bit more caring, and you are almost like helping your audience with kind of therapy. in a way, as in people resonate that you are a caring, understanding brand who has a product or services to help them get to where they need to be. Whereas an empowering brand is a bit more like coaching. It's like, right, yeah, I understand you, but let's do this. You know, here's the 5 steps you need to do. Here's the product or the service that will help improve this, you know, problem in the world. And this is the difference between understanding and empowering brands. And finally, and very importantly, are you all about global change or personal change? So it's important to understand that we might all have big, ambitious goals where we do want to change the world, but how do we get there? Do we start at the global level? Like, so all of our messaging is we are disrupting the system. We are implementing these processes that literally change the world on a big scale, or are we helping the individual make the changes they need? And that is, you know, the first step or the first kind of domino effect to make that big change happen. Does that all make sense and sound good to everybody so far? Yep. Good to hear. So the next step, thank you, good to hear, super helpful. So the next step in finding your brand voice is your brand ambassador. So this exercise is really helpful. So people connect with brands in a similar way to how they connect with people. They like their personality and they resonate with their message and how they communicate it. And this is really useful exercise, like I said, because when you're reflecting on your own organizational and brand values, there's a risk of getting into a bit of an identity crisis, you know, being unsure about what values are more important, how you want your audience perceived, how do you want your audience to perceive you, and also sometimes your internal team, you know, dynamic, you can clash on what's most important. But luckily for you, there are millions of pre-existing brand ambassadors who, in a perfect world, you could select as your own. Because there will be somebody who's a perfect fit, either an actor, a sports person, a celebrity, you know, living or dead, because this doesn't have to be real, who encompasses all the values you wish to portray through your brand. So you can pick one and decide internally that they are your unofficial brand ambassador, because we know that they would connect really well with our audience, you know, and this can then help guide us through everything we do and everything we put out to the world. So what would be the difference in the messages that your organization would put out if you had a few of these different brand ambassadors? What would their approach be like? How would it be different? How would it positively or negatively connect with your audience? And I'd like to ask you to just, in the chat box, type some thoughts about what words spring to mind when you think of some of these potential brand ambassadors. So if you want to put the name, then a couple of words, just to get the, you know, get our thoughts going. Game changers, good. Who is that, Lucille? Stephen Fry, knowledgeable. Yep, that's good. Judi Dench, enduring. Very good answer. Let's see. Beyonce, iconic. I like it. Beyonce, empowering, iconic. Very good, I like that. Principled for Greta. Good. So do we kind of get why it's important to select a brand ambassador when we're trying to understand how we can better connect with our audiences and to get the message across in a way that will resonate with them without having to worry too much about, you know, what our values are, what's important to us. We can just pick somebody who's like, yeah, they have these qualities, they resonate with our audience because we have over here as opposed to over here. And that is a good way of giving us guidance. So for example, it's like, okay, how would, say, Obama write this write this social post, for example, versus how would Dame Judi Dench? Even if the core message is the same, the way they say it is different. Exactly. Jodie says it defines who our brand is and is not. Very good answer there. So I've put some thoughts down for some of the words that could be associated with these people, because these individuals, they have their own brand as well. You know, whether they've designed it or not, they have a brand identity and we have a brand perception of them in our minds. So I'm just putting up a few of these words here. If you agree with them, let me know. If you disagree, let me know as well. So Stephen Fry could be witty, smart, English. That's what he's known as. Idris Elba, I'm sure some of you here might agree. He's pretty cool, like a strong, quite masculine. He's a very sexy guy as well. Dame Judi Dench, kind, approachable, resilient. Finally, Bay, powerful, feminist, inspirational. So good. I hope that exercise will be valuable to you when you're thinking about how to make a difference to your brand. So the third and final step in finding your brand voice and beginning to form, you know, the beginnings of a successful brand identity that makes a positive impact in the world is defining your purpose. So what is your mission? Because it's hard to compete on features, even if you're the best. People buy into why you do things just as much as how you do them. So to go beyond the everyday functional aspects, like what is your reason for existing? Why did you start doing what you do? What problem did you set out to achieve? Or how have you identified a problem later down in your brand journey that you want to use your brand's power and your resources to try and help solve? And ultimately, what world do you want to create? Because one example of this that I like to use is something as quite dull as banking. You know, all the banks are pretty much the same. You know, there's a lot of ethical questions around them, but we can learn from how they use their branding. So the banks generally don't talk about how they've got a great mobile app, or the fact that the interest rates are at 1% right now, or the fact that they've got some branches open still. They're far more about, you know, we are here to help you start a family. We are here to help you buy that house. You know, we are here throughout your life's journey, this strong and established thing that has helped you throughout all of your life's ups and downs. That's the kind of, you know, the brand purpose that these banks tend to have. And that's far more impactful than saying, you know, we have an interest rate of 0.5% at the moment. Use us, because that's a very weak message. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So once you've gone through the find your brand voice process, that really gives you a good foundation to start understanding articulating and telling your brand story. So your brand story is effectively the series of events that have sparked your organization's inception and how that narrative still drives your mission to this day. It's a bit like just in our favorite books and our films with the characters, the stories they go through. And if we can craft a compelling brand story, your audience will remember who you are, develop empathy for you, and ultimately they'll care about you and use your products and services, and you can help make a bigger impact in the world that way. And you're a bit too further ahead. So some of the elements that help make the brand story is understanding what is unique about your organization, reflect on your defining moments of your founders, your team, when, like, was the date or the era of which you were founded important? What was the problem you were trying to solve? You know, all these elements that help make you unique and defining moments can bake into your brand story. And then we have to identify who will resonate with the story and why they resonate with this story. So we can then shape that story to have the biggest impact to increase support for our cause, increase donations to charities that we like to help, or people who want to align themselves with our story so they buy our more sustainable or ethically sourced products over the others. And ultimately, your brand story helps influence your visual identity and all future marketing. So, making your brand real. So like I said, finally, once you've understood your desired perception, have found your brand voice, and have a better understanding of your mission and the story you want to excite your audience with, you've got to make it real. So in order to do that, we need to create a number of consistently branded elements that help tell the story. So a well-crafted logo that summarizes what you do, and it becomes the recognizable face of your brand. Your visual identity that tells the story in the correct tone of voice and does so in a way that connects with your audience. All the messages and the marketing that speaks to the right audience in the right way. And of course, that can influence the content and the design of your website, social media, and all other marketing materials that help to establish your brand as a leader in your field and one that can inspire positive change to be a force for good in the world. So, are you ready to use your brand for good? I like to think that all of you already are because you joined this, but so if you'd like help articulating your brand values and finding your brand voice, I'll be sending everybody who attended this event my free Find Your Brand Voice worksheet. I'd be happy to arrange a one-to-one strategy session to discuss your goals and how we can help you get there. And I also run a series of half-day brand workshops. And of course, I provide branding and visual identity design to help you get from where you are now to where you need to be. So that is the end of today's session, end of today's workshop. I hope you found it useful. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to unmute yourself now. We can have a chat. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Jill. Thank you all very much. Has anybody got any quick questions, or are you all needing to get back to work?
Hi, Will. Got a question.
Hi, Fiona.
If an organisation or a brand could do kind of one thing this week to make themselves appear or act more sustainably, what would it be?
Appear or act more sustainably? Well, I would always say act more sustainably, obviously. I suppose it depends on what they do. So I like to often start with the people and the staff involved. I've been involved in a few, you know, sessions where we try and help people within the digital agency world become more sustainable within the confines of their office. So I think it starts with the individual. So if you can get the team on board, so perhaps review a few of their processes, how they work, some things in their own daily lives that can, far more easily get them on board with that thought process. So it isn't this external thing imposed on them from outside. The team are going through that journey together, and it's a more authentic, thing that can help bake it into that brand story. So if all the team are on board with that thinking, then that makes the external marketing far more authentic. Does that answer your question, Fiona?
Yeah, bro, thank you.
Thank you. Nice one. Someone asks, can you share the slides? Yes, if you've registered, which you have, you should receive an email with a recording of this session, and you can go through that in your own time.
Hi, Will. Could I just ask a question?
Hi there, Jill.
Hiya. When you mentioned in step 3 about the mission, I've been working with somebody who's helping me look at setting up my CIC, and they've mentioned about the vision, and it's something that I'm really trying to get to grips with. Is there anything that you can help with, like the difference between the mission and the vision at all?
Yeah, sure. But first, what is it that you do? What's the CIC?
So I'm a teacher and a counsellor, so I'm going to be providing counselling and mental health training.
Okay. And why is it that you do that, would you say?
Because I want people to have better mental health.
Okay. And what are the steps that you take to get there?
You mean with setting up the cake?
No, as in the actual processes and the functional stuff that you do day to day.
So providing the counselling sessions and training sessions, you mean?
Yeah.
So I want to work with the community in offering affordable counselling, because I'm passionate about the fact that there's long waiting lists, and that people are having to pay so that they don't have to wait. And also I'm looking at providing mental health training as an alternative to people that don't necessarily suit counselling, because I know that it's not for everyone, and there's different ways that I can help people with the mental health.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for me, the main difference between the vision and the mission is I see that the vision is almost like the world that you want to see.
Okay.
What is the big positive outcome if your mission was achieved? So
Yeah.
I see that the vision is far more of a kind of big picture, blue sky thinking thing. We want a world where XYZ, where people are like this. And then your mission is, our mission is to do XYZ to help them get there.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the mission comes first to get to the vision, but you need the vision first to start doing the mission. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Thanks. I just wondered where that fitted in with the 3-step plan. Would that just sort of be included in with? Would it be in step 3 in with the mission and vision together?
Yeah. So the third step is broken down into, I think it's five different sentences. It starts off very much, we do XYZ. It's very, everyday, hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
Then the next few goes into the actual mission, and then the final sentence that you end up writing is the basically what the vision is. So whilst it is kind of all joined up because it does link into one, one links into the other, you start off with the mission, then it ends with the vision. And once you've articulated that, because people in everyday talk don't really say the difference between the mission and the vision, but if you can articulate what you're doing in a compelling way, it's fine to combine, you know, the mission and the vision in a sentence that just gets people excited.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Nice one. Thanks, Jill, for the question. So there's a couple of other questions in the chat group. Jody asks, so this is probably beyond the scope of today's presentation. In cases where you are doing a rebrand, similar identity but new name to take wider geographical market share, do you have any suggestions how to transition from old to new? That's a very good question. Jody, if you're still around and happy to unmute yourself for a second, if you want to give me a bit more info on what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, hello. This is a kind of a personal project rather than a work project for me, but we've got a local organisation, so it's about kind of connecting sustainable businesses. And we've been working with our local region, and we want to now work with a wider local region. So there's certain elements of the kind of identity, and the mission is still the same, I guess. We're Sheffield based, and that's in the name currently.
Yep.
So the plan is to kind of widen our scope, and so therefore we'll use a less specific kind of name. But it's kind of, how do we get from being seen as a local enterprise to be seen as a more regional enterprise? And I mean, do we just turn the website, would you like transition the brand quickly or slowly? And that's the bit I'm kind of struggling with, I guess.
How would your audience react to maybe an overnight change, do you think?
It would depend on how well we prepared them for it. But it's very seen as kind of a grassroots local thing. So it's do we need to kind of maybe phase it a bit more? I guess is the challenge.
One approach that I've done in the past when we're working with a rebrand, and we've got lots of members, who are quite active in, the kind of community that we've built, is to kind of involve them in that process. So one thing that I've done in the past is we kind of email out to all of our members a short 5 or 6, question survey, and just say, we are in the process of rebranding. This is the reasons behind it. What do you think about this, or this? And then that kind of gets them more involved in the process. It also lets them know that this is happening. And because they have had some input in the process, they are probably more likely to be happy with the outcome, because, if they see that a change has been made and that was their input, they're like, oh, that's good. I've actually shaped some of this. Yeah. Do you think that
I think they're quite attached, so I think that makes sense to have that.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Like branding, logos, names, it's all very kind of emotional, isn't it? So yeah, so there are lots of steps we can do to kind of soften the blow, help take them on that journey as well. So it's not just we're imposing this new thing on them and they haven't had any say. So that might be an approach that could help.
Thank you.
Nice one. Okay. Any more questions? I can't see any more in the chat. Does anybody want to quickly mute themselves and jump in? Or is everybody good?
I got a bit of a question. I think so. Hi, it's David.
Hi, David.
When I completely agree with that kind of community approach and where you kind of check in with people, but I think it is important to have that structure around that, because making branding decisions by consensus, I can imagine you can go round and round endlessly. You can't do it by committee. So how would you recommend kind of putting that structure and putting those boundaries around it, around a kind of decision-making process like this, which is so fundamental to an organization's being? And like you said, you want people to identify with it, but at the same time, you do need to get to an endpoint and have at least a prototype to test with people. So what would you recommend around that kind of governance side of rebranding or branding in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So what is it that you do, David, just before I answer?
Oops, I muted myself. I'm a civil servant, but I'm asking about Woodcraft Folk, which is an educational charity. I'd say like identify with Greta, that kind of climate change, social change. That's what it's there to do. It's coming up to 100 years next year, I think, of existence since it split off from the Scouts. But it needs that kind of identity reiterating now. I think that's one they specifically asked me to have a look at it, and I've sent a link in the chat to listed, which are essentially mission. I think it's mission statements they've come up with, but it's very, very long. So it's how to approach that, knowing that they work very much in a very consensus decision-making process.
That's the thing, rebranding is often quite hard, is often kind of, like politics involved and people who have been in the organization for a long time, and there's a lot of things to work out. So what I would do is have your own kind of internal workshops with the key people who need to be involved, go through the find your brand voice process, maybe kind of individually, and then bring it all into one workshop where you can, compare your answers, find where the common ground is, and then you have a bit more of a shared voice and a shared, understanding of what page we're all on. And then when you said about opening up to the outside and the membership and people, we obviously don't want to invite people to make the key decisions and do the whole design by committee, because I have experienced that in the past. It's been a nightmare. It never works. So for those kind of processes, what you want to do is do as much work behind the scenes based on asking questions, so as I mentioned with like Jody, perhaps put some strategic surveys out that says, what values do you think kind of represent us the most? What words resonate with you? And if we are wanting to, reestablish what our values are or how we might look and feel, perhaps we might want to think about, because it is a relatively old or established, organization, you might want to ask, how important is it that it is a kind of heritage, organization versus we are still here, we're still innovating, we want to be here for the future, and we want to help the next generation. And then you ask what is most important, and then if there's a consensus, that will then guide the internal decision. I'm thinking, okay, perhaps we need to rebrand to kind of double down on the heritage, or maybe we need to rebrand to look a bit more, forward thinking, a bit younger. And then based on that knowledge that we get, we then do some internal work, and we could potentially then do our own internal well, I say internal as in you would obviously get somebody in to help, but an internal rebrand process where you come up with an option or two, then you could potentially put that out to your membership and say which one looks or feels correct, and then have a vote. So so you are the ones who are guiding the options. So, you know, so we don't end up with like a third crazy option that's bright pink and got stars on it. But you're in control of the process, but you're inviting them into the process at key points along the way.
I get you. Yeah.
Do you think that's a good process?
I think at the moment they're just trying to do all those things. So that I look reading through is heritage and future, and I don't think you can do both. So I agree. You do need to make some hard choices. But thank you. That's really useful and really useful presentation. I look forward to seeing the worksheet and sharing that with them.
Good. Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, David. Thanks for your question.
Cheers.
Good. Any more comments or questions before we wrap up? Nope. Okay, in that case, I just want to say once again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Edward, is that? For your comment there. Thank you all for being involved. And like I said, check your inboxes over the next day or two. It might end up in the spam for some reason. It isn't spam. But check your inboxes. You should receive the workshop and recording of this session. And more information about me can be found at goodwillstudios.com. And yeah, let's keep in touch. Have a fantastic day, everyone, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.